All right. We don't have any formal introduction, but
Okay.
we have an amazing guest right here. Multi-time best-selling author Jeff Berger and pastor here at First Conroe. Um,
You're gonna sit back. Just let you know.
sorry.
The mic won't pick you up here.
Um, that's the most recent one, correct?
This one's the most recent.
This one's the most
Yeah,
recent.
this was
That was the one
this
that I
was
was thinking of.
pre-pandemic. Yeah.
So most recent.
Yeah.
Tell me, tell, tell me a little bit about it.
Okay.
Because I'm not gonna lie and fake like I read it already. I have not read it, but just flipping through it, I'm already interested, and I see that you have stuff noted. So
Yeah.
obviously,
Yeah. So this is called American Idols. Very original title. I know I made that
I like it.
totally up myself.
A little pun.
But it is about idolatry, and we don't think of that as a relevant topic for today. But what I try to show is, first of all, it's all through the Bible that a big part of our unhappiness is because of idolatry in our hearts, and the genesis of it came during a period in my life when what other people would call a midlife crisis, when I was just, and when I say midlife crisis, I didn't get a bunch of piercings and chase girls or anything like
No
that.
Corvette
But
outside.
no Corvette, yeah. But it was basically I went through a series of events where I just felt more and more worthless, felt like a failure in life, and it was a crisis for me because I'd been preaching all these years that if you have Jesus in your life, then you have joy. I
Yeah.
had Jesus in my life and I didn't have joy.
Yeah.
And so it took a while to figure out what was going on. And I realized it was because of misplaced loves, idolatries, and a lot of them were good things. Like I wanted to have a healthy marriage, which is a good thing,
Yeah.
but I idolized that. I wanted to have a good relationship with my kids, but which is a good thing. But my daughter was getting into her teenage years. My son was heading into school. Both of them were paying less attention to me. I wanted to be successful at what I did. I was having some struggles in the church I was pastoring, and so all these things came together, and I realized if these things become more important to me than my relationship with God, then I'm destined for unhappiness because everything's going to let you down at some point, aside
Yeah.
from Him.
Yeah.
So that I've been working on that for a long time, and then finally decided to put down my thoughts in this book.
I love that so much. And I think it's refreshing to hear from a pastor that I don't have it together.
Yeah,
I speak for others because there's people that are going to watch this that may not ever step foot in a church and may not ever step foot in this church, and it's really cool that they can see at least one pastor who I can vouch for as a good man, somebody that I would look up to, and somebody that I do look up to, and somebody that I've reached out for in crisis and like stuff like that. And it's like you're still a man at the end of the day. And when we get up and put men on a pedestal because you're a pastor, you forget that you're a person. And the same as that, you will eventually let that person down.
absolutely.
So it's cool that you can be transparent and write a book that talks about stuff that anybody can relate to. You don't have to go to church to relate to feeling. Everybody has been down, and it's like, why am I feeling down? And it's cool that you can be introspective enough to be like, why? And then find that why, and then express it, and then help other people.
Yeah,
But yeah, you weren't like, it wasn't anything bad.
right.
It was literally, I love my family, I love my kids, but my son has told me that he hates me one time, and I cried like a little baby.
It's devastating, isn't it?
And I was like, you don't understand what you just said to me.
Yeah,
I had to calm down, and it took probably an hour. And I told him, I was like, dude, don't ever say that unless you mean it. I said, if you hate me, tell me. And he's like, no, I don't hate you at all. I was like, you don't understand how much that hurts. And it's like, we do. And I'll admit, like, there's a lot that I put up on this pedestal, and I'm set up for failure. I'm set up for failure because there's gonna come that time that, I mean, he's 8, so we got a lot of time, but I still get to kiss him and hug him, and he wants me to hold his hand back to class after I eat lunch with him, and it's like one day he's gonna be like, "All right, Dad, like, can you go?" Like, but I'm gonna enjoy these times, and I think I'm just gonna keep having babies, and then we can just everyone that goes off, I'll be the 50-year-old with a newborn. So
Yeah.
um,
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that because I don't want to leave the impression that there's anything wrong with loving your kids. That's what you're supposed
no,
to. But yeah, it's when you get to that point where your whole life is invested in them,
yeah,
and then what happens when your son decides, okay, Dad, I'm ready to move on with life. I'm going to
yeah,
move across the country, or
yeah,
even in that moment when he's mad at you, because he
yeah,
will be at times. I
yeah,
mean, if he is your whole world, then you're devastated. But if Christ is your world, then you can still love your son and keep it all in perspective and not smother him. So yeah,
yeah. When I was a teenager, anybody that was close to me would know that that used to be my thing. I would cuss you out and never think twice, and I had cussed my parents out, and it's like now it's like me and Justin were talking about it last week. Finding a common bond, a common anything that you're gonna have something in common with anybody if you try. We just don't try. And when I heard that, it instantly drew me to you. But it's like I would definitely take that. There's things that I wouldn't take back in life. I would definitely take that back because that's now as a parent. I couldn't imagine my kids telling me like I hate you or like and
yeah,
me and like not meaning it, but like in that moment you feel it, and it's like I said some things that I would definitely take back, and it's like
yeah.
yeah, so um, but let's start with your story. Tell
Okay,
them tell them a little bit about your background and how we got here.
okay.
How do we? Because everybody wants to be a good man, a good husband, a good father, a good whatever you're looking to be in life. And I consider you that. How do you get there? And more importantly, how do you keep that? Because everybody can have it's like sports. We love sports.
Mm-hmm.
So this random guy might have a good season.
Yeah,
How do you become Tom Brady where you just have, greatness, and it's like how do we get here, and then how do you sustain it?
yeah, yeah. Well, that's a great question, and yeah, I wish I could say I was spiritually Tom Brady, but
I just called you the Tom Brady of preachers, so everybody else step it up.
I'm not sure of that. But you know, part of that is, you know, I read something the other day, and it spoke to me. It said, we assume that only non-Christians need the gospel, right? Because that's how they get saved.
Yeah.
But Christians need the gospel just as bad. And what that means is, if you ever get to the point where you think, okay, I've made it, that's when you're going to fall. So the key, I think, is every day realizing I've still got a long way to go. And that's not self-hatred. That's not
Yeah.
downplaying the good things that God has given you and that you're able to do in Him. But it is realizing I still got a long way to go. I'm going to focus on those things, those areas where I'm not like Him yet. I'm going to be honest about my failings, and I'm gonna lean on Him. I'm going to lean on.
So is
His
that a
grace.
daily like thoughtful thing, or
Yeah.
are you on autopilot and it just comes natural?
No, it's very intentional. It has
Okay.
to be intentional.
Yeah.
It's like I actually literally have a list of these are the areas I know I need to work on, and I'm bringing them to God because naturally we want to pray. I mean, even people who aren't vaguely religious, they pray about things that are their kid gets sick or they need a job and they pray about it. That comes natural
Yeah.
to us, but I think you need to go a step further and say, Lord, I know you've got a vision for who you want me to be. So help me to strive for that and give me the strength to reach for that.
Yeah.
Help me to be the faithful husband. Help me to be the good friend, and help me to be the effective employee, or the wise boss, or whatever. So, yeah, it's bringing those things to God every day.
And how do you balance that? Because we talk about as men having to wear these different hats,
Mm-hmm.
and how were there times where you couldn't balance that the way that you needed to, and you focused too much on church,
Yeah.
and you're failing at home, and like just that aspect of it, because when you go into the back of the church, you're boss.
Mm-hmm.
But when you go out there, you're the leader of the
Yeah.
church. And then whenever somebody's sick, you're a pastor and they need to help. And whenever somebody's going through something, they randomly call you or text you and say, I'm going through this. So you're constantly juggling way more than most people probably even know.
Yeah. And it is a struggle, and I'm sure there's lots of people who could say that about their lives too. I just think you have to know you're going to fail sometimes, and be aware, be ready for when you're made aware that, oh man, I'm spending too much time at my work, or I'm focusing too much on my hobby, to make that change, because we get stubborn.
Yeah.
So one of the stories, it's not in this book, but one of the stories I love, there's this pastor I admire named Tim Keller, and he planted a church in Manhattan, a place where you don't plant churches. And so he told his wife when they first got there, he said, listen, I know we got little boys. I know you're used to me being a help at home, but it's going to be hard to plant this church. So give me 3 years where I'm going to be at the office a lot. And then after those 3 years, I'll be the dad I was before. And so she's like, okay. Well, 3 years come and go, and he doesn't change. So
Yeah.
she comes to him and she says, you said after 3 years. He said, okay, I just need 3 more months. She goes, okay, 3 more months. So 3 more months come and go. He doesn't say anything, and he still hadn't changed. So one day he comes home. True story. So he comes home to their apartment in Manhattan, and he hears this glass breaking, and it's out on the balcony. He goes running out there, and she's got their wedding china all stacked up on the balcony, and she's smashing it with a hammer. And he's like, what are you doing? And she goes, this is what you're doing to our marriage. You need to change. And he's like, oh, okay, stop it. Let's sit down and talk. And so they talk and they figure it out. And they're like, okay, I'll work less and we'll do this. And they work it all out. And then afterwards he said, man, you were an insane woman on the balcony. And then when we walked in, you were completely rational. How'd you do that? She said, oh, I wasn't insane. I did all that on purpose. And she said, the truth is those 3 dishes I broke, we didn't have any cups to match. And I was just hoping you'd get home before I got to the stuff that I couldn't afford to break. But anyway, I think about that story all the time, that you just need to be ready for when life sends you that message that this isn't working, I need to make a change. Because if you get stubborn and you just keep your head down and pushing the direction you're going, you're going to hurt yourself and others.
That's key. And that's key. That's a flaw of mine, is I say flaw. I don't know. I've done that sometimes, and it's like you want to just say, one of my favorite things is I'm me, and it's like you don't want to change.
Yeah.
Because you do have a comfort level, especially once you've gone through these ups and downs where you become comfortable with yourself, and it's like, I like who I am. Why don't you like who I am?
Yeah.
And of course, you have the wisdom of knowing that there has to be some give.
Yeah.
In any relationship, you mentioned marriage. Marriage is that's tough. It is tough, and because of things that you have on that book, because of struggles, and because of being just hard headed and stubborn and selfish, and all the things that the world tells you, like it's okay, it's okay to be this way. It's okay to love yourself and don't change and don't. And it is that finding that balance of give and take, I guess.
Yeah, and I talk about in here, I go through different chapters on different kinds of idolatry, and one of them is sex and romance, and how, if you were an alien from another planet, you came down here and wanted to study the human race, and you just listened to our music and watched our entertainment, you'd think, oh, these people, what they worship is the idea of falling in love, having sex with someone you're attracted to for the rest of your life. That's
Yeah.
that's the ideal. And I mean, no doubt that is a beautiful thing, but we've made it into the ultimate thing, and we've even come up with this idea of the soulmate, that if you can just find that one magical person,
Yeah.
that will make you happy forever, and nobody can do that. And so a lot of our idolatry is we're hurting ourselves and the people we end up with because we have these unreasonable expectations.
Which is also crazy because if you look at all the statistics and everything, people don't leave where they're from often. So the chances that you're quote unquote soulmate, like, no, you just find love where you are.
Yeah.
And if you find a couple things in common, we're physical attracted, physically attracted people. So it's not that you happen to meet somebody from the other side of the world. Like, no, you literally met somebody because y'all work together or
Right.
y'all somehow y'all come into contact.
Yeah.
And you're in the general area. So it is funny that everybody thinks that, like, my soulmate's out there, but it's like, you go to 3 different places every week. Like, you don't branch out anywhere. Like, if you believe in that, your soulmate might be in Chicago. Are you leaving? Well, no, I love Texas. I'm never leaving. Like, okay, well then that's all a lie. And it is. It's all a facade that we build up, and it's something cool that we tell ourselves, but it's like, no.
Makes a good plot for a movie, but
It's really cool. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really cool thought,
Yeah.
but it doesn't pass the test. It doesn't.
yeah.
It's not real. It's a lot of self-satisfying stuff. What are the other? You took the book away.
Yeah,
I
here it
wanted to
is.
know the other ones.
Yeah.
So we talked about family.
Yeah. Talk about sex
So
and romance.
this will all go back to. You'll think this is funny because it'll all go back to stuff that we talked about in the last episode. So we talked about family. We talked about politics, which we shouldn't do. We talked about a little bit about romance, I guess. We talked about religion. These next ones are really, really interesting. Approval,
Yeah.
which we all want. Money, which I don't know if I'm doing it the right way, but the way that I treat money is that it's a tool to live and a tool to have fun. And one of my favorite things to do, because my kids are little and they think that daddy's rich, and it's so stupid, but I'll go and cash a check or whatever, and I'll be like, give me $300 in $1 bills. And they probably think I'm taking it to a strip club or something. I take it home and I give it to the kids, and they think, oh my God.
It's a big old stack of money.
But Bryson's getting smart now. He knows math now, and he's like, it's $100, Dad. Like, you got all those hundreds. Like, why don't you just give me one of those? But they still do enjoy it, and they still just play with it. And I don't want them to. I want them to respect it, but I want them to know that it doesn't define you. That there are worthless millionaires, and then there are people making 20 grand a year that are amazing, amazing people. And there's people that you idolize that started out at the bottom, and it's like all these people most of these people, I mean, started from nothing and built up money. Did they change? Like, maybe a little along the way, but it's like they were always an interesting, cool person. So it's like, don't judge somebody because they don't drive the newest vehicle or dress the night. That's the funniest thing is people dress nice to try to look like they have money, and then the people that have money, they're like, I just throw on the cheapest, most comfortable shirt and a pair of jeans, and I'm done. Like,
we buy stuff we don't need to impress people we don't like.
Love that saying.
Yeah. So in the chapter about money, I talk about my brother is an architect, and a few years ago, back where I'm from, so South Texas, they had this oil boom, natural gas really. So all these ranchers started finding natural gas on all these ranches. You know, these small time guys who lived on 30, 40 acres, had a few cattle. not rich people at all, but all of a sudden they became rich.
Yeah.
So, and my brother said what was interesting about it was I all of a sudden started getting a lot of jobs where people were asking me to build a new church building or a new church gym or a new church fellowship hall. And he said the reason was these ranchers, they didn't need anything. So all of a sudden they had all this money and they thought, okay, well, I guess I'll buy a new truck because I kind of need that. And I'll just give the rest of the church because I don't need anything.
That's crazy.
And he said, we can't even conceive of that because
No.
we're if you said I'm going to give you $2 million, we'd say, okay, this is what I want.
I got it spent now.
And
Yeah.
pretty soon we'd be up to 10 instead of 2. But he said, think about how much happier you are when you can just say, I don't really need anything. I can buy a couple of things that I need, and the rest I can help other people with. So it takes we're a long way from that.
Yeah.
We need to get back to that simplicity.
Because I'm a buyer. It gives me that endorphin or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
That just buying something. If I'm down, I'll just, hey, buy something. And like, even if it's not for me, I love to buy, I'll buy something and just, hey, here, give it to whoever needs it.
I'll take it.
Whenever they ask for whatever. Hey, buy these mic stands. Done. 10 seconds later. Don't check with me days later. Like, they're already bought. I love buying stuff. What are you talking about? And then I think the one that might be the biggest one, it's not the biggest one. I'm lying. I don't even want to talk about the biggest one. We might, but the one that everybody can relate to is comfort. We all want to be comfortable, and we all get scared and overthink and all that kind of stuff. So in your life, what does that look like? What does getting comfortable look like?
Yeah.
And do you ever find yourself, do you ever, like, I know that you're like, you have these things but do you ever just, it's been however many months and I'm comfortable, like,
Yeah.
I just feel good.
Yeah, and like all these things are good by nature, but when they become ultimate, that's when they become idols and they damage you. So, we were talking before we started taping about how hard it is to raise kids.
Yeah.
So when my kids came along, I loved them, but at the same time, I was like, man, I miss having me time. I miss being able to wake up and just eat breakfast and read the paper back when there was newspapers, and watch football games and do what I want to do. And now my world revolves around this other human being, and that's when you realize, some things are worth sacrificing a little comfort for.
Yeah.
And I talk about how, every good thing has its extreme that's bad. So it's good to take a day off and just do nothing, right?
Yeah.
And just be.
Yeah.
But the extreme of that is I'm lazy. I don't want to help anybody. I don't want to do anything for myself because I just gotten used to this. I shouldn't do anything that's uncomfortable for me. Well, where are you going to get with that? You have to do some things you don't want to do in order to be a good employee or a good friend or a good father. So, you have to sacrifice some comfort sometimes to get to where you want to be.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's just good stuff.
I mean, I even thought about when we think about prejudice, that's comfort at base level because I like being around people who are like me.
Yeah.
And so when people who aren't like me move into my neighborhood, I'm like, no, I don't like this. Yeah. That's my comfort idolatry speaking.
Yeah. And then, again, to talk about stuff that we were just talking about as we set up, like, it is so cool learning the way that other people live and the way that other people think, and it's like other cultures, and I find it interesting. But you're right, so many people, and us included, me included, you get in this comfort zone of, this is where I live, this is what I do, this is the church I go to, I belong to. And we talked about, again, to revert back to what we talked about last week, we have this team mentality, and I'm on this team, and like this, and this, and all my friends, we all believe the same thing. And it's like, no, you got to branch out a little bit and get out of that comfort.
Yeah.
And that'll lead into the last thing that I want to talk about from the book, is politics.
Yeah.
How do you do you keep it out of church, and how do you keep it out of church, and why?
Yeah, and different pastors are different on this. Here's my line. I think the Bible obviously speaks to issues that are political, like race, like the sanctity of life, like sex, like any things we argue about in the voting booth. The Bible talks about them, and so yeah, I'm going to talk about those things. I'm going to say what the scriptures say. Where I won't go is I'm not going to endorse a particular candidate
Yeah,
or a party because those are humans,
yeah.
right?
I think the key with what you said is something you always attach it to a scripture.
Right.
It's not, this is my opinion. And it's like, it might come out, like I might be able to tell, but you're not going to go out there with a Trump flag or a Biden flag
Right.
and be like, all right, like,
Yeah.
because it's just,
Yeah, I think what happens often is we get so in love because these days we're passionate, and I'm talking about Christians here, passionate about our
Yeah.
politics,
Yeah.
and our faith in God is like yeah. But let me tell you about what I saw on the news last night.
we all know people that have lost family, friends, like all kinds of stuff because they voted for a different person than you, and it's like,
and you can't love that person in spite of disagreeing with
What?
them. Yeah. And then what we do is we fall in love with one particular group or party,
yeah,
and we read that back into scripture. So for instance, if you're a Republican, you want to hear all about abortion, you want to hear all about sexuality, but you don't want to hear about poverty.
Yeah.
You don't want to hear about race. And if you're a Democrat, it's the opposite, right?
Yeah.
So, but we have to be honest as Christians. We have to say, okay, my faith in Christ comes first. So sometimes that's going to mean I'm going to disagree with the people who vote like me because they're only looking at one side of an issue, and I know what the biblical side is. And I say in the book, sometimes Christians should annoy the people they're voting with because we're not 100% on the team. We're willing to hold accountable the guy I voted for, but he cheats on his wife, or the guy I voted for, but he lies on camera. So I'm going to speak out against him.
yeah.
We don't do that because our political parties have become too important to us. So
Which is something that we intentionally do, knowing that it's not beneficial to the people around us. It's, I'm watching, Hulu's got a documentary on the Lakers starting from the 80s, Showtime, and when Dr. Buss bought the Lakers, and it just, we're going through, and now we're getting to Kobe and Shaq breaking up and Kobe taking over, and they go into team, and whether you're on a basketball team, a football team, or just in life, like the team that you have around you, it helps whenever you don't agree on everything.
Right.
Whenever you can push somebody. Whenever I vividly remember the big Sports Center thing when Kobe yelled and left practice, and he said, "Y'all are soft. You're not making me any better. Why? If you're not going to come out here and hustle and practice, then I'll practice by myself. I'll get more out of practicing by myself than I will with y'all. Like, you're not helping me." And it's like, Shaq didn't like that. Shaq didn't like that Kobe wanted to be the guy, and that he pushed him and he called him out. You're coming into the season fat and out of shape, and you're telling me you carry us through the regular season. I'll be in shape by playoffs. And it's like, well, you're a terrible teammate. You're the husband that doesn't do anything, and you're like, whenever it comes to the bills getting paid, I'll make sure I pay the bills. It's like, but you're not doing anything else.
Right.
Like, cool, but it's funny how we can relate ourselves to. We try to make it seem like the world is bigger than it is. We all go through the same thing. So whether you're the pastor, whether you're somebody in the church, whether you're not a church member, whether you're famous, we still have the same difficulties in life and the same. And the older I've gotten, because you grow up as a kid and you idolize these people, and it's like, then you get to see behind the scenes of what they went through, and it's like, that's the one person I can talk about just because I know everything about him. And you go back to these stories of Kobe, and it's like people forget about the whole thing in Colorado, and I couldn't imagine being falsely accused of rape. Like that's probably the worst thing you could be accused of, and it's like he had to fight that, and he showed up at halftime of a game after going to a court case and just went out there and hit a game winner. And people forget that, and it's like I look up. People joke about it. I do. I get constant crap, and I set myself up for it. I mean, I don't hide that. Talking about idolizing people, but it's not just as a basketball player. It's as a man. It's as a father. As a just as a person of persevering. He stood for so much more than a basketball player to me. Like he just, but and I think it has a lot to do with it came at a time where I was going through stuff, and it's like seeing somebody fight through these things, and then
you needed a hero.
Needed it, and that's what exactly. You want somebody that you feel like has it all together, and I respect him even more now that I know some of the downfalls, because even though he didn't rape this woman, he cheated on his wife. So, I mean, he had his own downfalls, and he pushed a lot of people away. He didn't have a lot of friends. Because he was so focused on winning, he was away from his family a lot. You can talk about any of these things, and it can be a negative. Like just to tie it all back to your book, all these things he was chasing greatness. Like we all benefited from it, and it wasn't anything bad. But at the end of the day, like he definitely idolized winning, idolized like all these different things, and that can become a bad thing.
Sure.
And then to tie that in, I want to know your opinion when we talk about Kobe, when we talk about how do you justify if God's in control? How does he die?
Yeah.
At 40, 41.
Yeah, well, why don't you give me a hard question? I'm just kidding. I mean, that's probably one of the 4 or 5. That kind of question is one of the 4 or 5 type of things that causes people of faith to struggle more than anything else. Is, okay, God, you're a good God, and this was a good person. How could you take them away? And anybody who claims to know the answer is blowing smoke.
Yeah.
But here's what we know. We know based on the fact that God became a man named Jesus who died for us, that he loves us more than himself. So that's fact number 1. Number 2, we know that this is a bad world and it's not his fault. He didn't make it that way. We made it that way. And so bad things happen. So those are the 2 things we know from Scripture. What we don't know is, why didn't God intervene and stop that helicopter from going down so Kobe and his daughter wouldn't die, and the other people in the bird? We don't know. But based on those other 2 facts, what we can say is he must have had a reason not to intervene. He must have had a reason that someday we'll look at and go, okay, now I get it. Now it makes sense. It's sort of like when you're a little kid and your dad makes a decision that just infuriates you. But you say to yourself, I know my dad. I know he's a good man.
Yeah. I
know he loves me. He's got to have a reason. I'm mad at him. I can't lie that. I can't deny that. But I know he's got a reason for it. I'll just have to understand it later. And I think that's what we have to do, is realize someday we'll understand. But in the meantime, we just have to trust that he knows better than we do.
Okay, but no, seriously, that's been the biggest struggle in my life is how God took away my dad. And it's like, do you just rely on finding out later and hope that you find out later? Because even if we fast forward and die and go to heaven, like, there's no promise that God's gonna like have a one-on-one with you and be like, look, this is why I took your dad away. Like,
Well, here's what I believe. First of all, I don't agree that God took your dad. Maybe it's semantics. Maybe you'll just say, oh, you're just playing with words. But I think it's more a case of we live in a world where we're all mortal, where bad things happen. And every once in a while, God chooses to intervene, and we call those miracles. I mean, that just happens rarely. But most of the time, he doesn't. And we don't know why he chooses to intervene when he does, and the rest of the time, he leaves it alone. So,
yeah, he didn't like strike him down dead.
Exactly.
Like, he had
so why didn't
arteries.
why didn't he intervene?
He had a heart attack. Like, and you hear about these people that had 9 heart attacks, and they've had 14 stents put in. It's like, my dad had a heart attack, died. Like, game over.
Right. So what I believe about heaven is that we're going to have... I don't think we get to heaven and we suddenly know all things.
Yeah.
I think we have eternity to learn.
Yeah.
And we got access to God. And, people talk all the time about, hey, is there basketball in heaven? Is there hunting in heaven? And I'm like, yeah, there probably is. But once we get there and we see how fascinating God is, I think that won't be our main focus. It'll be him.
We go back to our selfishness. Like, we all want to be like, oh, heaven's going to be just like this, but forever. And I just get to hang out with... My mom will say stuff like, she'll be like, your dad's up there playing one-on-one with Kobe. No, he's not. No, he's not. Can we please stop? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, and... it goes back to how selfish and naive we are. And it's like, we've painted heaven as this place of my personal playground and I get whatever I want. And it's like, well, how many other people's dad passed away that loves basketball? Like, Kobe's going to have a long day every day.
Yeah, that's right.
Just playing basketball with people's parents
all
and kids and all. Yeah, like, this is crazy. Like, I don't, if we get to heaven, I don't think that that's what it is. I don't. Like, I think it's a funny, cool way to think about it.
Sure.
While we're here, but I could not, and I could be wrong. I don't know, but I don't see that being the way it is. There's, it's a fun thing to think about though.
Yeah.
And we talked about before. That'd be a cool one from a pastor standpoint. Have you ever had to do a funeral? I'm sorry if you're talking about funerals again.
That's right.
But we talked about funerals last week, and it's my least favorite thing in the world. But have you ever had to feel like you're lying or dodge it and not like, you know what I'm saying? 'Cause
so it's a really bad guy, but
everybody's not going to heaven. Right. So, like, if you believe in heaven and hell, you can't just say, "Oh, everybody's going to heaven." Like, no, there has to be a hell side. Like,
well, I've kind of made a deal with myself that I would never say anything that wasn't true in a funeral.
Yeah.
So, I've done funerals for people I didn't know very well or didn't know at all, and so I just kind of relied on the things that people told me, and. One or two I've done where I knew that person didn't follow the Lord at all.
Yeah.
And so I'm not going to stand up there and say, well, I know this person's in heaven.
Yeah.
But instead I'll just talk about things I knew about them that were good things. Yeah. Because, a funeral should be an honoring of that person's life. But I also, I'm not going to blow smoke. I'm not going to, make him sound like a prince of a guy when he wasn't. I'll say what I can that's true. And I think that's a whole lot healthier than,
for sure,
making them out to be someone they weren't.
That'd be a tough task.
Yeah.
But it happens.
Yeah.
It happens. And that just goes back to you and your morals and compass and knowing that and being true to yourself. To switch it up a bit, I promise I'll answer questions that or topics that people wanted to cover.
Okay.
You're a big sports fan.
Yeah.
A friend of mine wants to know what I think about the Texans rebuild.
Okay.
So let's hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah. Well, I hate to say this.
Might be the hardest topic.
No. I hate to say this because I hate to be negative because I think he's a decent athlete and seems like a good guy, but I don't think Davis Mills is the answer at quarterback.
And everybody you want to believe it so bad that it's
but
like
4 games in or 3 games in, and it's like, yeah, you belong in the league, but you don't look like an NFL starter. So it sounds like, we didn't want them to have to draft a quarterback this year, but I think it's looking more and more like they will have to.
Which just means a longer rebuild.
Exactly. Otherwise, I like some of the changes they've made up top. The general manager seems like he knows what he's doing, and some of his draft picks look good. So, not that I'm an expert, but they're hard to watch right now. They are really hard to watch.
You see people, and it's like, I love going to games, and you see people like, oh, I got cheap tickets, section 1, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, I got a long day Saturday. I'm not going Sunday.
Yeah,
Like, I want to go to the games, and I am a fan. I watch them on TV, but I cannot dedicate a full day to watching y'all get your butt whooped.
Because it is a full day, man.
And
football games last forever.
You just got to make that, because people are going to get tired of hearing about the Lakers, but I watched those games where it was Kobe and Smush Parker and Kwame Brown and everybody would just pass the ball back to Kobe, and it's like, hey, can you drop 50 and we might win? And it's like, it's a struggle, and we don't have a Kobe Bryant on the team. There's we've traded away every superstar,
right?
And it is a sad time. We lived I think that's one of the biggest things is they didn't live up to what you can translate to life. They didn't live up to their potential. They had J.J. Watt and Clowney and Merciless and Cushing and Hopkins and Watson and the sky's the limit. We signed Ed Reed. Like, that's when the writing's on the wall. When you start signing these names. When the Lakers signed Karl Malone and Gary Payton when they're 64 years old, and it's like, you don't have a shot. Dude.
Right.
Like, they made it to the finals at least. It would have been cool if the Texans made it to the Super Bowl, but we did all this for
Houston
nothing.
Team never has, man.
Yeah, no, we did it for nothing.
Yeah.
I had to answer that question. I'm trying to pick your brain on some other stuff. I like the insight, and I like the fact that people can talk and hear a person talk about things that they can relate to and not have to be inside of a church. Mm-hmm. And how do you fight that? How do you fight? Because I've been to different churches, and I the church that we go to most often is Woodlands Church, and I can wear what I have on right now, and nobody bats an eye. There's other people dressed like that. There's no Southern Baptist. You're not wearing a hat in church. Like, how do you fight? Because I know you have visions of growth that directly have conflict with tradition of a church that's been here for 130
years.
130 years.
Yeah.
So how do you, if God's calling you to go in this direction, how do you totally change what's been done for 130 years?
Well, yeah, that is a challenge for a lot of, and fortunately, I'm not a hugely innovative guy. I just feel like you preach the word, you love the people, and you train the people to love people.
Yeah.
And I recognize, that's one of the reasons why I think it's good that there are so many different kinds of churches, because the kind of people who would be drawn to a Woodlands church are different than the kind that would be drawn to mine. That would be different than the ones that are drawn to, Impact Church in the Woodlands. It's an African American church. There's all these different ways that people worship Christ, and it's okay. But if I just feel like if our people start loving people out there, that's how we're going to reach people.
Yeah.
And so that's our focus.
I like that.
It's less about making big changes in the external stuff, and more about the way we respond to people.
That's so much bigger and so much more impactful, because if you you could preach the best sermons every Sunday, but if they don't see you living it, and more importantly, if they don't see the people living it, it's like, because back to our team mentality, you wanna be proud of what church you go to, and you tell people what church you go to, and you tell people like, hey, this is what happened at church on Sunday. And it's like, you fall in love with the church, but it's like, okay, well, now I'm gonna watch how you treat people, and it's like, is that adding up?
Yeah.
On that same topic, Joel Osteen. Why do people hate him? Why do church people that are on the same team hate him?
Yeah.
Hate. Not dislike.
Right.
Hate.
Right.
There is genuine hate.
Yes. Oh, I agree. So I'll just preface this by saying my style of preaching is way different than his.
Completely.
So I have issues with some of the ways he presents the gospel.
Yeah.
But why do they hate him? I think it comes down to success. And so anybody who's successful in any field is going to have a group of people that find reasons to hate them.
Yeah.
And so I think it's healthy to look at someone as popular as Joel Osteen and say, I wish that he talked about the harsh things in the Bible and not just the happy things, right?
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine to tell people, hey, don't just watch him on TV, actually read the word for yourself. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But when you get to the point where you're finding reasons to hate a guy because he has tons of people in his church and your church has maybe 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
There's nothing Christ-like about that.
It's weird to me.
Yeah.
It's honestly weird.
And like I said, it's in every field. I mean,
Yeah.
you find that in sports.
Yeah.
I mean, your man Kobe
sure.
had plenty of people that hated him.
For sure.
For no other reason than he was good. But as Christians, we shouldn't be that way. Especially like you say, since we're on the same team.
Yeah. And that's like, he's reaching people, millions and millions of people every week, and it's like, you should be celebrating that.
Right.
And like, of course, you can disagree with the way he does it, and you can hope that those people. That's another thing too, is if you're leaning on a pastor,
right,
that's not your relationship. Like that's your relationship with your pastor. That's not your relationship with God. And it's like,
that can be an idolatry right there.
I had that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I had that happen. I had a pastor that was there when my son was born. I could talk to him anytime. I like a genuine friend, and then everything hits the fan, and you disappear, and it's like it hurts. But that's when you realize that you're leaning on a man.
Exactly. And
inevitably, people are gonna let you down.
Absolutely.
How do you become transparent with struggles that you have in your own life? Like, is that something that you bring up, or is that something that you keep inside and try to just do your own?
No, I think the church needs to see their pastor struggles with things.
Yeah.
Now, preaching can't be therapy. I can't be up there every Sundays talking about I'm such a loser. Can y'all affirm me? But when I share about a struggle, I do think it helps people go, oh, well. Plus, it not only makes it more likely that they'll listen to me, but more importantly, I think the whole church is healthier when we're all transparent.
Yeah.
And we're not putting on masks.
Yes.
And we're walking into church and saying, hey, can you pray for me? Because this week I yelled at my kid, and I feel terrible about that, and I want God to do something about my temper or whatever. That's a healthy church.
And with the world we live in, with social media and with all that, the stuff that's going on. So like, for you to walk in and act like you have it all together, at some point, there's gonna be a crack in that facade, and it's like if you're just open, I think that everybody just benefits from that, and you're more relatable. Like I want to know in that situation. Um, I just wanted to know like this is what happened because it's not a singular church thing. You've seen it come out with a lot of I say a lot. It happens though, but with pastors, and it's like watching how they handle it. It's like I would much rather you get up there and tell me like this is what I'm struggling with. I don't feel like I can lead anymore, whatever, than to just leave. Um,
Yeah.
and that goes back to my dad. So I was a deacon at this church with you, and my dad was asked to be a deacon whenever I was a kid, and flat out, like after praying about it and everything, told him no, because you get asked these questions, and one of the things is having your household in order, and me and my brother were wild. Shut up, Justin. Um, and that's another thing that I regret because I held him back from his full potential. Um, and that hurts. That hurts whenever you see that you had a negative impact on somebody that you cared about. But he was honest enough to say that. He could have easily, because everybody loved him.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loved him. So he could have easily, hey, let's go. Like,
Yeah.
I'm better than these guys. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
think that's a big thing that we do is um, compare ourselves,
Yeah.
good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not as good as this person, so you feel better about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, but I'm way better than these people, so
Right.
I'm good. And um, something I've always lived by, which again, I don't know if it's right or wrong, but it's something that I live by. Is I always want the good to outweigh the bad whenever it's all said and done. Um, there's gonna be bad. I just want the good to outweigh the bad.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully it's not close tie. Like
Yeah.
hopefully the good
Hopefully it's a
wins
blowout.
by hopefully the good wins by a good amount.
You want to
But
run rule the evil, right?
but yeah, that's definitely something
Yeah.
that I want. And what's next for you? Because you've talked about um, the transition from having your kids at home to
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
you're having to not reinvent yourself, but I mean it's definitely a next for somebody who writes books.
Mm-hmm.
It's a next chapter.
Yeah.
What does this next chapter look like?
Yeah, that's a good question because I'm 52 years old, and I want to keep doing this as long as God wants me to do this, and so part of it is staying healthy and uh, staying in the Word, and not never stop growing and learning. I want now that our son is away in college and our daughter is grown. I want to continue working on my marriage. I want my wife and I to have. I want these to be good years for us.
Yeah.
For a lot of couples, when their kids move off, they realize they don't have anything between them because they invested everything in the kids. I want to make the most out of my opportunity. I mean, the good thing about being a pastor, as opposed to say a professional athlete, Tom Brady's a freak because he can do that at 45. Well, I'm 7 years older than that, and I feel like I should be able to do this for another 10, 20 years.
Shot at Tom Brady. You heard it.
Yeah,
you heard it.
Hey, he may
Tom
be,
Brady can't keep up.
He may be chucking touchdowns when he's 72. I can't say he won't, but
Yeah, let's wait till he retires and stays retired for at
right.
least 2
Let's
seasons,
see
not
what
2
Giselle
months.
says, right? But yeah, I just for me, it's figuring out how to make the most of the opportunity that's before me because I've got 25 years experience as a pastor now, so I don't have the excuse that I don't have experience and don't know what I'm doing. So I've been given the chance to pastor this great church in this growing city, and I just want to be faithful with what I've been given.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, is this your therapy, writing books,
No,
or is it a hobby?
yeah, it's more of a hobby. It's more like I have thoughts that I think might help some people who will never come to my church, or people who come but they hear me say it once,
Yeah.
and it's better for them to see it in print where they can go back and go, okay, what did he say? So I write these and I self-publish these. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not counting on ever. You said best-selling author. That's funny.
I told him, hey, you can't tell him that.
So if a few hundred people buy it on Amazon or come by the office and just pick one up and they take a look and it helps them a little bit, that's great. I enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
It's one of the few things I feel like I'm good at, and I'll keep doing it. I'm working on one right now about that's basically I came up with it when my son graduated, and I thought, if I were starting out life like he is, what are the big life skills I would need from a spiritual standpoint? And so I'm writing a 12-week devotional on, I'm calling it, I used to be clueless. Like, these are the things that I used to not be able to do, but now I can do them. I can make decisions. I can know what God's will is for me. I can know how to forgive people and things like that. So that's what I'm working on now.
So as a man, what you said about the books is why we're here. This is my way. I always said I was going to write a book, and it's like, oh wait, I don't like writing or typing or reading or like I like watching podcasts and getting information that way. And one of the podcasts that I watch is The Honeydew, and he named it that. It's a comedian, Ryan Sickler. It ends up being funny, but it's all about just interesting people. A lot of them are comedians, and it's like just hardships that they had in their life. And The Honeydew, he was at. You can appreciate this because I know that you like going to different places and having breakfast and that kind of stuff. And he would go and have breakfast, and you'd see all these bowls of perfectly good honeydew, and it's like it's just left behind, but you're still great. Like there's nothing wrong with it. And I think a lot of times people feel like there's something wrong with them. You might not be for everybody,
Right.
but you still have value. And one of the things that he always does with a first-time guest is he always says, what would you tell your 16-year-old self? And then I want to tweak that a little bit. What would you tell 15, 16, 17, 21-year-old young people that you've learned, because they might not have that relationship with their parents. They might not have had a pastor, a mentor, all these different things that we have the luxury of having. What would you tell them?
Yeah. So one is going to be spiritual and one is not going to be spiritual.
I like that because, like I said, my audience is not going to be
Right.
100% church members, and I love that.
Yeah.
But they get to sit down and hear the thoughts of a pastor.
Yeah. So the spiritual one is, I think, God creates every person for a purpose. My favorite verse in the Bible is Ephesians 2:10. You're God's workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works that he prepared ahead of time for you to do. So everybody has a purpose. And so just because you feel like you don't have value, that because you couldn't make the team or because that girl didn't say yes when you asked, well, that doesn't define you. God has a plan for you. The non-spiritual one is when you're that age, when you're a teenager or in your early 20s, and put it this way, when you get to be 40 or 50 and you look back at yourself at 16, at 18, at 21, and you think about the things that consumed me, the things that I worried and stressed about, they're so minor now.
Yeah.
They're so ridiculous now. I obsessed about, again, to give this example, oh man, I wanted to be the starting tight end on the football team. 20 years later, that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, I want this girl to go to prom with me. I know it's heartbreaking when the girl doesn't go with you, but 20 years later, you see her in a mall and, you know, you're like, thank God.
Dodge that bullet.
Thank God. You know, so just realize if I could somehow convince younger people to just not stress out about the things that consume them and realize there are bigger, more important things in life. Like, I mean, you know, I think a lot of kids when they get older will look back and realize, you know, I spent so much time chasing after people that I wanted to be part of their group because they were the cool kids. When now my parents are gone, and I wish I would have just hung out with them more. You know, or wish I would have, you know, spent time with these people who actually valued me. So yeah, it's changing your priorities.
Because it really is, it's those little things, and that's why I'm able to. I don't have it all figured out as a parent, and some people probably disagree with my parenting styles, but they are what they are. It's just little moments like my dad would work shift work and he'd have to wake up at 2:30 in the morning and have an hour drive. Yeah. I'd still be up, and he'd be going to work, and I had school the next morning. He's like, "Why are you up?" And I was like, "Why are you up?" And just that little interaction, and I was petty, and I'd hide his lunch that he was gonna take just to have something. Just we were friends, and I think that's important, and just those little moments. The thing that I do with, I've always done with Bryson, and now Camden's gotten to come along on a couple, is we'll just go take a ride, and he'll ask for it. He'll be like, "Dad, can we go take a ride?" Which sometimes he abuses it, and it's like, it's time to go to sleep. "Hey, Dad, can we go on a ride?" It's like, "No, buddy, we'll go tomorrow. Like, you got school." Like, but just taking that time out to take a 30-minute drive and talk with your kid, and I remember those moments. I remember so many little things about my dad. It wasn't these huge vacations and stuff like that we stress about. And I don't remember ever needing anything. I know that they probably stressed financially and had hardships and all. We didn't know anything. Like the things that we worry about as parents, our kids don't care. And we talked about Little League football earlier, and it's like, it's the funniest thing in the world, the difference between, because I had somebody pull me to the side and, hey, you gotta change this, and this. And it's like, last year I was so consumed with making these 6 and 7-year-olds great football players, and we're gonna win this game. And it's like, it finally clicked towards the end of the season. Whenever a kid, it was the fourth quarter, and we were getting stomped, and looked me dead in the eye. He's like, "Coach, are we winning?" Now I look back at that moment. At the time, I was mad, and then now it's like, I don't ever bring it up. Like, we'll talk about the game for a second, and then once we leave that field, that game's over. Right. And if you ask every kid on the team what was the score, they don't know. So it's just instilling the good things that come from sports. We're both sports fans, so the discipline, the teamwork, all these different things that you're going to take and use in life, and just having fun and just enjoying who they are and watching their growth. I think that's the cool thing. But yeah, I think we definitely focus too much on trying to look at these big things, and it's like, your kids don't care about that.
Right.
Your kids want to know that you love them.
Yeah.
They'll remember all those times that you showed them that you loved them.
Yeah.
Because you get in that going back to comfort, you get in that routine of, all right, love you, have a good day. What did you do at school today? They don't answer. Okay, time for dinner, and then that's your routine. And it's like, no, like, take them where they're comfortable, play Fortnite with them, and sit and talk about what went on today. Like, what happened today? Like, what'd you learn? Oh, math. Okay, cool. What part of math? Okay, subtraction. Okay, what's this minus this? And we'll just start talking about, and then before you know it, we're doing homework while we're talking about Fortnite. And it's just trying to be, um, trying to be that person that they can always lean on. Um, that's I think that's all I got.
All right, man. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Seriously, I appreciate it, and I hope that people really do get something from this. You without hesitation. A lot of people would have said no. A lot of people wouldn't open up and just sit and have a conversation. And the funniest story, I have to blast you a little bit, is I don't know if you got a new phone or just don't like me or whatever. I texted you. It was like, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a podcast?" And you're like, "Yes." And I was like, so excited. And then you get another text that's like, "By the way, who is this?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, seriously? Like, I felt so good.
I don't
I
know.
felt so good
I don't
about
know
it.
what happened.
We're good. We're good. But I love that it wasn't I'm doing this because you're this and I can get this out of this. Like, um, you didn't have anything to gain from it. You say yes because you wanted to do it. And a lot of people want to pretend to be perfect and don't want to talk about tough subjects. And unless um, they know what you're going to talk about. What are you going to ask me? Like, we had nothing. I have nothing. Every time we hit play, I have nothing scheduled. It just flows as it goes, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes we fumble, and whatever, we roll with it. So, I really do appreciate it, and I think that people are going to get a lot out of this, and I'm looking forward to the feedback from it.
All right, man.
From people you know that get to see that open side of you, and then from people that don't know you and you might have answered questions that they've struggled with for years. I really think that it's just beneficial to have these just open conversations with different people from different walks of life, and I'm not slowing down. The same way you enjoy these books, the podcast is a way to reach people that they're not. I'm not gonna go meet up and have dinner all the time, but
Sure.
you can talk to me every week on the podcast. So
Yeah.
it's cool. That's it.
All right.
Peace.